Daniela, how about now? Any volume now? Let's see. Okay, now you can hear. Okay, good. We got microphone 1 on. Check, 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 check. That's microphone 1. Now this is microphone 2, microphone 2, microphone 2. Let's make sure microphone 2 is working. Cool, they're both working. All right. All right. You hear your crew coming in? All right.
Yep.
Hey, ladies. Hi, good to see you.
I did. I can't believe it.
There's also a couple of chairs over here if you want to come on around.
Is one of these for Terry, or he's not here?
Terry's in Costa Rica.
Oh,
And I hope he didn't forget about our 2:30 start time. I don't see him online yet.
yeah, what time is it where he is?
Oh, they're 2 hours ahead of us. They're 2 hours ahead. in Vegas.
This is fun. That's not even as far as Florida. They're 3 hours.
Yeah, it's more south.
Greens? From the Greens?
Oh, yeah, I sure could like. Yeah, I know.
Could you pass a book down, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
While Terry's getting everything ready, I'll start by saying a couple of things. Behind us, you can see the theosophical tenets, the 3 basic tenets. We're going to be talking, he's going to be talking today about the first one, to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or color. And one of the things that we're going to get into here in a little bit is about prejudiced people. Prejudice should totally disappear, but it hasn't. And excuse me a second. Hello. I guess they're coming. There we go. Got some other people on here. Anyway, one of the things that got me excited about theosophy was the fact that they don't care what religion you are, they help you practice it. But by the way, do you mind if we study it? And I've studied a lot of different religions through my time, and a lot of them have, a lot of them are very, very prejudiced. I mean, the fact that we had World War II, the Japanese thought they were better than anybody else. The Germans thought they were better than anybody else. So we can knock out a lot of the wars by dropping this prejudice stuff. Now, one of the things that I studied was the Gnostics. Jesus's brother or cousin, John the Baptist, was a Gnostic. In fact, the place that Jesus was born in Bethlehem was owned by Gnostics, and they were glad to get him to come in because they knew he was coming. Jesus tried Gnosticism a while, and then he realized the Gnostics were thinking they were better than anybody else, and he dropped them flat. So anyway, that's a little background, a little history on religion. So
Almost time. All right, we've got 3 people online.
That's
More
fascinating.
will be coming soon.
That's what you've been studying.
So, does anybody have any questions so far about what we talked about 2 weeks ago or anything like that about what theosophy is and why we're here doing this? It's because everybody, and it goes, this, like I said before, this goes clear back to the Atlanteans. Everybody is your brother and sister. If you're mean to your brother or sister, you're mean to yourself. And that, that's been, and that's what Jesus used as the golden rule. Do unto others as you have unto. So there's a lot of repeat through all the different religions on what's been happening over time. So if you study religion, you're going to see that. I've read a couple of the books from the Muslims, their Bible, very, very similar to the Christian Bible. I'm not really a Christian anymore. I can't take that claim. I've given up on that. But I've studied too much about the Catholic Church, and it's just killed my Christianity part. They were so mean to other Christians, to other, to the Muslims, to everybody. There was 700 years in Spain where the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims lived in perfect harmony, perfect peace. They intermarried, all kinds of things went on. And then Catherine, it was the lady that gave Christopher Columbus the right to come to the United States, the money. Isabella, right? Yeah, she gave the Jews the right to either move, convert, or die. Following year, she gave the same one to the Muslims: move, convert, or die. Most of them went back. There's a 7-mile stretch between Africa and Europe. Most of them went back to Africa and settled in the African continent. So anyway, yes, dear.
Okay, I have a question. I have a comment first. I am Catholic. I take no offense at what you're saying, which is part of why I'm exploring different things.
Okay, good.
I'm also right now taking A Course in Miracles, and as well as a metaphysical group study. So I'm just inundated. How basically does this differ from A Course in Miracles?
Oh, boy.
I'm not sure we can comment on that because I haven't studied the Course in Miracles. I'm not sure if Roger has either.
Yeah, I have.
Have you studied?
And, yeah, in fact, I got 2.
So no, we can't really comment on that.
Okay, I won't comment.
We don't know. We don't know. Yeah. As we said last time, there's no requirement to believe anything we say at all, and there's no requirement to believe anything theosophy teaches. If something that is said or discussed here rings true and makes sense, apply it where you can in life, and it might help eliminate a little bit of suffering. It might help with your walking of your path. But as we also made very clear in the last class, theosophy mirrors religions in certain ways, and by no means does any theosophical or yogic teaching recommend or require a religious person to leave their religion. What the teachings do recommend is that you live the religion more deeply. You understand the purposes of the rituals and the traditions and why things are done the certain way that they are done, and live the religion. The branch of yoga that has to do with religious devotees is called bhakti yoga. Bhakti. It's the idea of being of a devotional nature, and that's what a religious person is, a devotional person. So that's actually a form of yoga, and yoga, at its core, means union of yourself to whatever source is to you, whatever gives you your consciousness life. So bhakti yoga, aka religions, is extremely balanced. So by no means is anyone suggesting leave a religion, live the religion instead of leave it. Let's formally begin the meeting. It's 2:34 right now, and we always like to start off with a very short meditation. So let's do that first, just to calm our vibrations and kind of attune ourselves to each other and to spiritual study. And we'll end the meditation with a joint Om if you choose to join us. So just sit tall for a moment and let the eyes close. To our students online, hopefully you're in a place where you can sit calmly. And to our students here in class, just you can use the back of the chair for support if you choose. There's no requirement for a yogic meditative pose other than you're comfortable and your spine is tall. So tall spine and comfortable pose. So the eyes are just gently closed, and begin to notice what the airflow feels like as it enters the nose. Just become sensitive. Raise your sensitivity of the physical body and just sense the physical air as it enters your nose. Notice the roof of the nostrils. How does the air feel as it moves over the roof of your nose? And then sense the sensations of the air going down the trachea and into your lungs. No need to shape the breath, just be aware of it. The two nostrils form two separate streams of air entering the body. So notice where those two streams meet at the bridge of the nose, slightly deeper into the skull. Just be aware of that space. Where the two streams meet, there's a point. It's roughly behind the eyebrows, between and behind the eyebrows. Be aware of that space. Each time you inhale, sense a magnetism or an energizing effect happening at that space. The yogis tell us this is the third eye center, a chakra or wheel of life force. Each time you inhale, energy gathers, prana gathers and collects between the eyebrows and slightly back into the head. Feel a sense of calmness there, clarity there, peace there. And if you choose, join in 3 Oms. Inhale. Okay. We'll slowly come back. I'm using a different bowl than I've used before, so maybe that's why we were all on a different pitch there. This is, maybe you guys aren't used to my new bowl here. Normally we all have the same tone and pitch. Being a guitar player, I understand the different tones and pitches. That's all right. We'll tune ourselves up next time. All right, so there are 6 of us online. Oh, some weird guy named Sattva Sadaka joined. Anyone know who that is? It's Terry. That's his secret name there. All right, so he's in Costa Rica. As you see, he's not sitting right there like he normally would be.
What's his secret name?
Sattva Sadaka. You know what that means? We'll leave it as a mystery for now. Anyway, but he. It's to make you come back to the next class. Okay. As always, please be vocal. Please share your thoughts and opinions and questions. There are 2 microphones here in person. One is directed at my face there, and that one is kind of the general microphone that I can turn on and off as needed. And of course, to our students online, please ask your questions in the comment section and share comments. And I'm sure I'm going to lean on Terry, who's in Costa Rica, and Roger, who's sitting right here at certain points throughout the class as well. So last time we met, I opened up with a passage from one of the most incredible and insightful scientists that I think has ever lived, Carl Sagan. And I'm going to open up with a different quote today from a different author, from a different spiritual person named Eckhart Tolle, who's I mention him in every single class I ever teach because he's one of Terry's and my biggest inspirations. Oh, yeah. He has a unique way of taking all of the ancient wisdom that's ever existed on Earth and transforming it into understandable and relatable modern day practical language. So we really admire this guy. So let's let him kind of set the tone for this session today. So in his book called A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, at the very beginning, the first chapter, he says, most ancient religions and spiritual traditions share the common insight that our normal state of mind is marred by a fundamental defect. However, out of this insight into the nature of the human condition, we may call it the bad news, arises a second insight, the good news of the possibility of a radical transformation of human consciousness. In Hindu teachings, and sometimes in Buddhism also, this transformation is called enlightenment. In the teachings of Jesus, it's called salvation. And in Buddhism, it is the end of suffering. Liberation and awakening are other terms used to describe this transformation. The greatest achievement of humanity is not its works of art, science, and technology, but it's in the recognition of its own dysfunction, its own madness. In the distant past, this recognition already came to a few individuals. A man called Gautama Siddhartha, who lived 2,600 years ago in India, was perhaps the first who saw it with absolute clarity. Later, the title of Buddha was conferred upon this man. Buddha means the awakened one. At about the same time, another of humanity's early awakened teachers emerged in China. His name was Lao Tzu. He left a record of his teaching in the form of one of the most profound spiritual books ever written, the Tao Te Ching. To recognize one's own insanity is, of course, the arising of sanity, the beginning of healing and transcendence. A new dimension of consciousness had begun to emerge on the planet, a first tentative flowering. Those rare individuals then spoke to their contemporaries. They spoke of sin, of suffering, of delusion. They said, look how you live, see what you are doing, the suffering you create. They then pointed to the possibility of awakening from the collective nightmare of normal human existence. They showed the way. So with that being said, Eckhart Tolle provides us with a tradition, a history of tools that helps us eliminate this suffering and this insanity that he talks about. And the insanity is just that. It's the willful, either conscious or unconscious, causing of suffering to ourselves and others, right? So we do that because we don't realize, or we've forgotten, that we're all part of the same energy field, the same family, the same life force in the solar system, in the universe. And that's what chapter 2 in our Theosophy book is all about. It's about universal brotherhood, and not brotherhood meaning men or masculine. It's spiritual siblinghood or family. So with that being said, let's let's move into our material. Now, I want to jump right into this second, actually it's the third chapter. Yeah, sorry, I kept saying second. And the reason that we're skipping the second chapter is because the second chapter is basically a history of the Theosophical Society itself. And you guys can read that on your own if you choose. Before I jump into the material of the third chapter, let's do a little recap of what we discussed last session. So it was the first chapter, and we discussed what theosophy actually means and is and how it relates to yoga philosophy. And I explained that theosophy has tremendous theory, so much knowledge, written, spoken, shared on spiritual growth, on enlightenment, on how to eliminate suffering from one's life. Yoga philosophy gives us the tools, the practical teaching on what to actually do, what to do when emotions flare up, what to do in our daily life routinely in the morning to create a productive and efficient day. The yogis tell us what to do, hints and tools, ways to analyze what we have a lot of and what we don't have a lot of, and what we have a lacking of in order to balance our lives out, balance our own yin and yang. So theosophy has the theory, yoga teaching has the practical tools, and together they make a really, really excellent marriage of study. Further, in the first chapter, we talked about how theosophy is similar to a religion, but not a religion, similar to science, but not necessarily a science, and similar to philosophy, but not necessarily a philosophy. So just a quick recap of those three. How is theosophy similar to religion? Well, it's similar in that at religion's core, the root word, we talked about this last time, the root word of religion is religare, which comes from Latin, and it means to link back, to link back. And what are we linking to what? We're linking ourselves back to our source. That's what the word religion actually means. And so theosophy aims to do the very same thing. It aims to put us in a position to understand life, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Incidentally, my mom and I were just having this conversation at lunch on Thursday. The word yoga, the actual translation of the word, the etymology of it, it actually means union. That's what yoga means. Now, there are so many methodologies and so many different ideas that come to mind when I say yoga. You probably think of physical shapes with your body and breathing techniques. Well, those are tools that yoga offers to achieve this union that the word actually means. So religion means linking back to source. Yoga means union of lower nature to higher nature, or physical body to your spiritual self, and then to the all over soul spirit of the universe, so to speak. So those are the similarities of theosophy and religion. Now, the differences are several. There's no requirement to believe anything in theosophy and yoga. There's no dogma. There are, however, upheld beliefs, and we're going to go through a series of about how many of those fundamental concepts are there? There are like 12 of them that in the first chapter, that 12 or 13 that we're going to go through.
Oh, good.
Yes, we're going to go through those. So there are some foundational concepts that theosophy upholds and shares. Now, there's no requirement to believe any of them. So please know that this is just an open-minded discussion, and these concepts are presented from an esoteric place, not by choice, but just because not a lot of people search out this kind of information, to an exoteric place. Exoteric means available to all, and that's the main reason that the Theosophical Society was formed in 1875, was to disseminate this once secretive private knowledge of how the world works out to the public, out to the world, to help us in our lives. So that's theosophy and yoga as a religion. Now, as a science, it's probably obvious to most of us who have studied any of this stuff before, but as a science, we strive to investigate how the world works around us, how our bodies work, how our emotions work, how our thoughts work. There's tremendous teaching on meditation, what it actually is, the actual tactical steps of how to meditate. The great teacher Patanjali that I reference all the time, who compiled the Yoga Sutras, this entire book is about meditation. And he challenges us with the definition of yoga. Yes, the word itself means union, but he tells us that if you define what it actually means, it's meditation. It's learning to reach samadhi, the transcendence of your awareness from your brain, which is where we think where we think the world exists here, to a higher place, a more subtle place. So there's tremendous teaching on meditation. So science. So that's theosophy as a science, understanding how the world works, and then taking the hypotheses and theories and then testing them. Not necessarily in a physical laboratory with white coats and beakers and little flame under the glass thing and all that, but in the laboratory of your life. We're all spiritual scientists. If you care about proving some of these things, some of our friends say, well, I don't believe in that. You got to prove it to me. Well, that's just an argument that we never want to have, because you don't need to prove to someone else for any reason other than to boost your own ego. If you don't need to boost your ego, you don't have to prove anything to anyone but yourself. And the way you do that is apply it in your life. When you wake up and you go to work and you see how interactions between people occur, and then you apply a spiritual concept to that interaction, that's the science. Taking what you learned in a class or what you intuited during your own meditation, and then testing it out. For example, the most relevant example that comes to mind is an argument. Our tempers, right? Let's get really practical. When someone calls you a name, or when someone says you did a terrible job or degrades you, do you immediately lash back and fight back? Most of us do. It's natural. It's our natural insanity that Eckhart Tolle talks about. This place in the evolution of humanity, it's natural for us. But at this place in the evolution of humanity, we also have the opportunity to realize that it's a choice on how we act or react when someone attacks us. So do we pause for a moment, take a breath, and center ourselves, and then achieve a clarity of mind and then respond? That's a tool. That's something that you can do, and you can test that. Okay, and then you see the results. How did the result happen when I did the calm thing where I breathed and then I paused and then I replied, versus the knee-jerk reaction of getting red in the neck and in the face and then just yelling back? How did the results work out? This stuff seems super basic, but this is the core. This is the actual tactical teaching of what we're talking about here. Okay, so that's theosophy as a science. Now, as a philosophy, talking about answers to life, the big questions that most of us in this room assuredly have asked and pondered. Purpose of life. Why are we here? Why do we have physical bodies? Why is there suffering in the world? What is evil? Is there a plan and a purpose? Did the universe pop out of nothing, and is it going to return to nothing, or is there something greater out there? So theosophy is certainly a philosophy in those aspects. Okay. As always, ask questions of me from our students online, and of Terry. Terry can answer too from his cozy little jungle retreat in Manuel Antonio Park in Costa Rica.
I have a comment.
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that I've noticed by studying theosophy and applying it is that when somebody cuts me off when I'm driving, I let them go. I just back away and say, I guess you're in a big hurry, because I'm not in that big a hurry. So go for it. Go with God. Anyway, that's a comment that I've run across.
And we have Eugene as well in Costa Rica watching. Terry and Eugene both. They're nine students online. Sorry. So at the end of the first chapter, there are several fundamental theosophical concepts that we skipped over last time because we ran out of time. Because we love to talk so much, right? We just love to hear our own voice. Good thing I'm not wearing my headphones, or else I'd hear my voice really well and I'd never shut up. I got it here. Okay, so on page 4 at the bottom, I'm not going to read the first three. Let's go to the bullet point. So 1/3 down the page on the left side. So these fundamental concepts of theosophy. All right. The universe and everything in it are emanations or expressions of the ultimate reality, not creations out of nothing by a personal creator.
That's a hard one for me.
Sure. Let's read it one more time. The universe and everything in it are emanations or expressions of the ultimate reality, not creations out of nothing by a personal creator. Okay. You mentioned it's a hard one for you. Now, what in particular in that phrase or sentence or thought is challenging? Which part of it?
Okay, well, to me, it inferred, this particular bullet point inferred that the personal creator, to me, is God. Okay, so growing up, and these are old tapes that play on occasion, and this started them because I looked at this statement and I thought, is it scientific? Is it, religious? Is it philosophy or philosophical? I wasn't sure because I know that those three tenets make up theosophy. So when I read this, I'm looking, and when it said by a personal creator, and then I go to your questions in chapter 3, and it said explain what is meant by the immanence of God, and I'm feeling that there's a little bit of contradiction, and so I just needed that explained. The
Sure.
personal creator.
Well, I'd love to. So I'll start talking on that. And I'm going to also ask Terry, if Terry wants to comment on what is meant by a personal creator. In the meantime, he'll type and I'll relate what he types. So let's talk about that for a moment. Let's first define what we mean by personal creator. And it's important for us all to kind of, as funny as a request as this is, define what God means to you. Actually define it, because it's a nebulous, the word God is a nebulous concept. It's very vague. And for a lot of us who are here in this room, we're seekers of sorts. We're on a path of understanding, a path of expanding our own consciousness. And many of us have tapes that are playing, depending on how you grew up and what type of religious environment or non-religious environment, you have these tapes that are playing, these memories of what the word God means to you, right? It can mean many things. It can mean a person. It can mean a man with a beard. It can mean the sun. Countless cultures throughout history view God as the physical sun. That's their God, and they put a human face, on the image of the sun, and they give him physical attributes, and they otherwise anthropomorphize. That's the name for giving humanistic characteristics to a non-human thing. So we first need to talk about what God actually means to you and what feels right. A lot of times you'll see it with a capital G, a lowercase g. So this is a very, very important conversation to have. So what is meant by a personal God? Some entity or being or person that knows you personally and listens to your prayers and either answers them or doesn't answer them, causing multitudinous problems in your psyche when your prayers aren't answered. I put that air quotes around that. So personal God, right? So someone, and please, anyone can chime in and discuss this. A being that hears your prayer and either answers them or doesn't. Someone who knows you personally, who cares about you personally. So that's what is meant by a personal God. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I look at now, at this juncture in my life, I look at that. I look at God as the universal force that embraces the highest good for everything. And it's male, female, everything. Not the way I grew up as a Catholic and in an Italian culture that was, the man with the beard. Mm-hmm. And so, but now going through all of the metaphysics that I've gone through in my life and being who I am now, I embrace God as a universal energy that embraces everything, every force. And
that would not be considered a personal God.
No,
that's an
not anymore.
Right. Okay, good. So we've eliminated that little bit of contradiction, because the personal God wouldn't be the overarching universal force. Let's see, Terry, he tells us a personal God or personal creator is most commonly used in the Abrahamic religions. Mm-hmm. Now, the first part of that bullet point, and I like this conversation. I can see that we're going to be talking about these. We might not even get to our third chapter today, but that's okay. That's totally fine. The universe and everything in it are emanations or expressions of. Okay, so these concepts would almost be better served if they were at the end of the book, because all the chapters in this book talk about these concepts and flesh them out and explain them. So it doesn't do us a heck of a lot to dive so deep into each one, although I want to go deep into each one and flesh them out, but that's what this whole entire book and every one of these sessions will be about. So this refers to the multi-layered reality that theosophy and yoga philosophy teaches that the world actually is. So we have to first understand that the world and universe that we detect with our senses, our physical senses and scientific instruments, is only a fraction of reality. It's only a fraction of what actually exists. There are other layers or levels or dimensions of existence. Now, at the very top, it's not a direction, it's not up, and it's not anywhere you can aim at or look to. It's a different realm. At the very purest level, most subtle level, is this overarching energy that pervades the universe, that is the life force that charges everything, that gives consciousness and life to all beings. And it lives and grows. And now this sounds very biblical. It lives and grows through us. It moves in us. So that's how it emanates. That's how it learns and expresses itself. Just as we have fingers and hands and arms and faculties of reception, light, smell, taste, this energy force receives growth and information through its constituents, which is every life form in existence. So these are big concepts, I know.
I'm sorry.
Sure.
How did this force, one of my points that I'm trying to clarify
Sure.
in my mind, how did this force, like this bullet point, the universe and everything in it are emanations or expressions of the ultimate reality, not creations. But this universal force had to create something. I mean, was it, always was and always will be kind of old school sentiment? Or, I mean, how did things happen? That's where I'm having the connection.
Sure. Well, there are mysteries that we don't understand yet, but I can say that science is beginning to understand how the Big Bang actually occurred, and science is telling us that the Big Bang that we know about, that they're postulating with very good evidence, is only one of an infinite number of Big Bangs that has happened, will happen in the future, and that are currently happening now. And our world, our universe that we think is the only one, is not the only one. There's a multiverse. There are many of them happening, and matter is expanded and contracting. Matter and energy are interchangeable. Science does agree with that matter and energy are interchangeable. So at the point of the Big Bang, where there's tremendous unfathomable energy, there's also matter. And as it expands, it shifts back from matter to energy, and it changes and it cools and it hardens and forms planets, and then it contracts. And this is no different than any other cycle that goes on in all of reality. The ancient Hindu texts that are much older than the Christian Bible and talk about cycles, worlds being created and worlds contracting and moving into a state of rest after the contraction. And they liken it to, they use their anthropomorphized gods also to talk about that. Brahma, for example, when Brahma breathes out, it's the expansion of a world. And when he breathes in, it's the contraction. That's no different than any other cycle, a life cycle of a human body, the life cycle of a planet, of a star. There are cycles upon cycles upon cycles in the world all around us. And so the creation of a world, of a universe, is just a big old huge example of a cycle, of an expansion and contraction.
And if you go back to John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first parts of John, what's happening? There's breath coming out, forming right out of the Bible. Look at it.
I will. Okay.
Can I just say, I just read
Please.
something recently.
Do you mind if I turn this on you? Is that okay?
You must.
If I must.
Interesting. It was a quantum physics type article that even now our molecules are constantly reorganizing themselves based upon not only the need but our awareness of that need. So when something, do you get what I'm saying? It's
I do.
kind of hard. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Then maybe you can explain it. No, but even now today, but even now, molecules, they intelligently reorganize to meet the need of the day.
Say that again.
I know, that's as well as I can put it. I
No,
can
no,
send
no,
you,
say
I'll
it again.
send,
Say it
I'll
again.
send you the article. Molecules constantly reorganize themselves intelligently based upon the need of the day, even today, of the current situation, not only here, but
Molecules
Just-
intelligent.
And smart, yeah.
Yeah. No, really, that's what.
well,
I-
that's what
Yeah,
quantum
yeah,
physics
yeah,
is.
yeah.
That's what it is, kind of. I don't know if it's based upon it, but it's involved with
Let's
that.
address this for just a moment. It's relatively common knowledge. I'm not sure which textbook it'd be found in, but the human body regenerates itself 100% on average every 7 years.
Yeah.
Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
And so science knows that the same cells that make up our skin, the same cells that make up our eyes today will not be the same cells and molecules in 7 years that are making up our physical existence.
And the DNA shifts too. The DNA actually recreates itself as look at the twins that went to space. Did you just hear that? Read that?
No.
So the twins that were in space, one of them has rearranged his DNA about 20% differently than before he went to space.
Wow. And as a correlation.
He lived in space for a year.
As a correlation to the Bible, the Old Testament, everything's in sevens. And I always- I'm sorry?
Just been a days of the week.
Yeah, I'm just curious, and I'm curious about the pragmatism of religions taking just a unit of like this energetic force and making it their religion or a religion. And I don't know, I can talk about this. But
40 shows up a lot too.
I'm sorry?
40.
Oh, 40, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
lot.
Yeah. Uh-huh. But I just find that interesting that we're talking about this and the number 7. And then I just thought about the Bible, so isn't that kind of interesting?
Very.
Yeah.
Numerology.
Oh, and
Okay,
that too.
there's a lot more to be said on all these points, but let's go to the next bullet point here and see what the next fundamental concept is. The universe is eternal, but with innumerable worlds periodically manifesting within it. So we just talked about this. So when John Algeo, the author of this book, when he uses the word worlds, he's not necessarily meaning a planet. He might be meaning refer to a solar system, a galaxy, any type of functioning system, of which there are many. So our planet is one system. Our solar system is a system. Our Milky Way is a system. There are galactic systems that aren't talked about very much, but if you're a fan of the Science Channel and you watch Morgan Freeman's Through the Wormhole and other Discovery Channel programs, these cutting edge scientists are learning about galactic structures and systems, the largest things that humankind has ever known, systems of galaxies, and then of course the universe itself, the observable universe. So he could be referring to any one of these systems when he uses the word worlds. And this refers back to the cyclical nature of reality that I was mentioning. So worlds periodically manifest and dissolve. And this is a theme throughout most religions, and yoga philosophy in particular talks about periods of activity and rest, again, cyclical, periods of activity, which we're all experiencing now in our lives, and then the period of rest would be the stage between the physical body's death and the next physical body's rebirth. I know it's controversial. It's okay if you don't believe in reincarnation, but that's what's referred to in yoga philosophy and in theosophy with this idea of expansion and contraction, activity and rest. Worlds manifest and worlds rest.
Incidentally, when they first put up the space camera, and they turned it and looked at the darkest part of the universe, and at a distance about the length that you put your thumb out to, and they took a picture of it and magnified it, they counted over 30,000 universes in the darkest part.
That is infinite.
It is infinite. Okay, the next bullet point, let's see. The universe is pervaded by a collective intelligence, a cosmic mind, which is consciously expressed in varying degrees by all the beings in the universe. This is a real juicy one. There's an entire chapter on this, the constitution of man, or the koshas, the levels of consciousness, the levels of existence. So the first sentence, the first part of that sentence there. The universe is pervaded by a collective intelligence. Now, this will be controversial, of course. This refers to what is God? Is God awake and aware? Is it a sentient being, or is God just nature? But then if God is all of nature, is nature alive? Many cultures and traditions believe the planet Earth is alive. Many cultures, as I mentioned earlier, believe the sun is alive. Is the entire universe alive? Well, Theosophy upholds that the universe is pervaded by an awareness, by a mind, a cosmic intelligence of sorts, which consciously expresses itself in varying degrees. Now, what is meant by varying degrees? Well, there's a lot of stuff in the physical world, right? Stuff, matter and material, all the way from the most densely packed molecules and atoms, which would be granite, rocks, solid things in the earth, all the way up to liquids, gases, even less dense. There's material even less dense than gas. Light waves, radio waves, those are still things. Photons, light is made up of things, and the spectrum keeps going. Science can only detect a certain range of matter and material and energy, but it doesn't mean that the rest of it doesn't exist. So varying degrees. So at the very base level of physical existence, we have dense things like physical material. And science is questioning now, is there life in solid, inanimate objects? Is there some type of awareness, some type of rudimentary awareness? Well, if there is, then they'd be proving what Theosophy has been teaching for millennia. And that's one degree of this cosmic mind expressing itself. Again, there's a whole chapter on this, so I kind of wish these weren't even in the first chapter. So the cosmic mind would express some kind of awareness through rocks, through minerals, all the way. So then plants, animals, humans, and beyond. I'm doing my best to check our comments online, making sure I've got my phone and both things going so I don't miss any comments here. Barry Brown, he's so kind. I love it. He says, a ton of knowledge in this room. That's you guys. Okay, next. The physical universe, of which we are normally aware, is only one aspect of the total universe, which consists of multiple planes, fields, or dimensions of being, coexisting, interpenetrating, and interacting aspects of the whole. Of the 7 planes of our solar system, human beings function primarily on the lower 3, the physical, emotional, and mental. So in yogic philosophy, these are called the koshas, or sheaths. So the human being is not the physical body like we think it is. The human being is a spark of this divine mind, soul, or pure spirit that is sheathed or clothed or covered in various degrees and different levels, all the way down at the very base to this physical flesh form that we have here.
How did they get 7? Again.
So it's a combination of intuition, meditation, and ancient tradition.
And each of the 7 have subgroups in them too, so it's not just 7.
No, but
Well,
it starts.
just like the physical, we have horizontal, vertical, and we got 3 there. Okay,
Mhm.
so, I mean there's lots, but they try to group them.
So the lower levels are the most tangible, the lowest level being physically tangible, but the astral or emotional realm, that's quite tangible when you think about how emotions work. Have you ever had a strong emotion, either a positively strong or a negatively strong emotion? It's almost tangible. Have you ever used the analogy cutting the tension with a knife in the room?
Oh, yeah.
So emotions vibrate, they're things. Science can't really detect them yet. They obviously detect their physical counterparts. So when we have an emotional reaction, our physical body reacts. And that's why this bullet point talks about interpenetrating. So when your emotional body vibrates, guess what happens to the physical body? Something happens in your physical, your palms start sweating. Heart rate increases if you have an emotional reaction, right?
And look at the affirmations that they have where you actually go through and you cut. Have you ever done those affirmations?
Yeah,
where
you
you
cut the cord.
cut through this whatever emotion it
I
is,
like that.
and you
Mhm.
actually go through a cutting process, separating you from that bind that is attached to you emotionally.
See, there are infinite numbers of visualizations like that. That the yoga that would be a tool that that yoga would teach. A visualization or a meditation to change your life. That's a tool. That's the practical side of all this. Very good. And there are many visualizations. And we did one when we first started this class. I talked about gathering energy at the third eye. The yoga tradition tells us there are these seven energy centers in the body called the chakras. The Agnya center, Agnya, A-J-N with a little tilde, Agnya center, is considered the third eye, and that's the seat of our mental clarity and intuition. And that's why most of the time I'll have us, my students and myself, I focus at the third eye center versus the heart or the navel or the throat or the root chakra. A tool, again, physical, tangible, tactical things to do to apply this theory. Okay, where were we? We were talking about some crazy thing.
On the 7 planes.
7 planes, right. The physical universe of which we are normally aware is only one aspect of the total, multiple fields, coexisting okay. So the physical, emotional, and mental. So physical is obviously this, emotional we talked about, then mental. So it's said that our mind is not the gray matter in our skull. It's semantics to a certain extent. Some people call that your mind, but it's the brain. So the brain is the physical counterpart to the mind, which in this tradition, in these teachings, the mind is metaphysical. It's beyond the physical world. It's an entity that is part of us. It's a kosha, the mental body, or the manomaya kosha, as it's called in Vedanta terminology. Manomaya, manas. Manas means mind. Maya means illusion, the illusion of the mental body, and kosha means sheath. So the manomaya kosha, or mental body, is the third. So John Algeo is telling us that human beings function mainly on these three: the physical, the emotional, and the mental. Now, there are higher ones, and again, there's a whole chapter on that. It's very, very good. That's why I love this book.
It's loaded with information.
Loaded. It's taking
It's really
such
loaded.
vast knowledge and condensing it into a jam-packed 7 or 8 or 12 chapter, however many it is. Oh, one of my most dear yoga teachers, Greg Holmes, is online. Hey, Greg. So glad I got to join in. Love this. Oh, it's actually Susan. Sorry, it's not Greg. It's his wife. Even better. Just hijacked Greg's iPad. So good. Okay, cool. All right, so again, a whole chapter on that. Now, the next bullet point. The universe and everything in it are orderly, following patterns of regular cycles, including alternate phases of activity and rest, governed by a universal principle of cause and effect, or karma.
Mhm.
In human life, this principle of cycles is expressed, among other ways, by repeated births or reincarnation. Okay. So this is a very important one because it blatantly says here that the universe is orderly. So that brings up a whole Pandora's box.
Yeah.
So who ordered it? Who says what the order is? Who's controlling the order? Is there like a cosmic police officer and judge that drops the gavel? These are all questions that we're going to answer in the coming sessions. But I can give you a hint. It has everything to do with karma.
The law. of
Everything
cause
to
and
do with
effect.
karma, which is a physical law of action and reaction.
That's an evil laugh.
He's throwing out
So-
tasty tidbits, isn't he?
As young humans or young souls or people who haven't figured out this idea of brotherhood and that we're all part of the same energy field, we tend to do things that hurt others without really considering the effects. Basically put, we tend to be selfish. And the way karma works, karma has a tough job to do with people who are selfish because there's a lot more karma happening when someone is selfish. Because the karmic forces in the universe have to receive the actions and then send the actions back. A lot more for the person who's selfish versus the person who is selfless, which, by the way, is what this book is all about: becoming selfless, learning to release the ego, the sense of I-ness.
I heard at one point in time, if you point a finger at somebody, you're pointing 3 fingers back at yourself. It's kind of along those lines.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mhm.
And all karma wants is balance. That's all it wants.
Karma wants balance. So when you're an altruistic person, a selfless person who is not focused on me, but focused on all, guess what? You're now an instrument for the universe to work in an evolutionary aspect versus a corrective aspect. Or yeah, exactly. And that's why the last part of this says this is expressed, among other ways, by repeated rebirths or reincarnation. An 80-year physical life is a microsecond,
Yeah.
if that. Microsecond divided by a trillion. And how can all the karma a selfish person creates get worked out in a trillionth of a microsecond?
Can't.
That's hence the rebirths.
Enlightenment.
Okay, next, evolution. Evolution, which is the result of an inner and intelligent guidance expressed through personal effort, is good, has purpose, and follows a plan. Okay, so evolution, I don't know if we've mentioned the word evolution yet. Maybe we have. We were talking a moment ago about how the cells rearrange themselves and I would say they evolve. So physical forms have been evolving for billions of years, and Darwin talks about evolution of the physical form. Well, this is kind of very interesting because Theosophy and yoga philosophy bring in a double corollary to Darwin's theory. And the double corollary is the evolution of the awareness within the physical form that evolves also. And we heard a moment ago that the cells rearrange themselves based on the needs of the day. Well, guess what? The indwelling awareness needs an evolving form. As the awareness grows and learns through expression, the form has to evolve as well to provide more opportunities for the indwelling consciousness to learn and grow through. So two things are happening side by side. Physical forms are evolving, and the awareness within the forms are evolving as well through experience. At some point, the consciousness that lives in the body of an ant, for example. An ant can do a lot of things, right? They can create colonies, dig little tunnels, create systems of social involvement. But at some point, the little tiny limited body of an ant won't be quite enough for the consciousness of an ant to learn anymore. It'll learn everything an ant can learn at some point after thousands of lifetimes in different ant bodies all over the world, for example. There's got to be more, or else how would this evolution continue, and how would consciousness and evolution continue and grow? Well, the consciousness would then graduate, so to speak, to a higher form. What would a higher form be? It might be an animal that has longer legs, a giraffe. It might be an animal that has the ability to communicate with different sounds than ants can, something that has more opportunity. How about humans? We have more abilities with our physical body than any animal does, right? Well, different kingdoms offer the indwelling consciousness different opportunities for expression and learning and growth. I can see your wheels turning.
Yeah, with the ant. Are you inferring that an ant has a mind or a brain? Well, I don't know this. I mean, I'm not challenging. I'm asking.
Well, insects have nervous systems and brains, and they think at a certain
The
level.
little ant has.
It has a God force.
Okay,
The
that's
God force
really
is ever changing.
an ant. I can understand
Everything,
that.
rock.
No,
Science
right.
knows that insects
That
have
I
brains.
understand. I'm talking about the scientific aspect. of it.
Insects have brains.
Okay.
Yeah, insects
They
have
think
brains.
at a basic level. I mean, they don't understand the world and how it works like we do. But how do you think they understand how to find food and how to follow each other in a trail and
It's
carry food
instinct.
back to the?
By road.
But something in the physical body has to control the physical body. So insects do have brains, not like our brain, but they do have a brain.
Their
No?
DNA.
Different species have different capabilities. It's not true that humans have the highest level of abilities. There's certain animals that have abilities we don't.
I agree
Dogs
with you.
smell more than we do. Dogs hear better than those are just a few examples of that level of intelligence. I think collectively we're smarter, but on the level, I think they're just as smart as us on their level.
And they operate more on, I think, instincts as well,
Mhm.
which,
I don't believe in instinct. I think there is instincts, but to be alive, you have to be alive to have an instinct and think to have an instinct.
one can
Our ego
react
makes
on
us think we're
instincts.
superior, that
That is part
that
of it.
our abilities are superior. But I agree with him. I think animals are just as capable as we
I
are. They're
watched
just
the
capable in their
Discovery.
own
You should
world,
see some
on
of
their
these
own
things these
level.
animals do. It's like they have alien powers, some of these animals. Have you
Look at
ever
the
heard of
penguins.
like a trigger
The-
shrimp?
Let me ask you this: do chipmunks have brains? Do dogs have brains?
Yeah.
They do.
Okay, so insects
They
is
all
just a
have
different form of an animal kingdom. In the animal kingdom,
I
they
think
have
a
brains.
plant probably does too.
Yeah.
Now, science wouldn't say a plant has a brain, a central, nervous system, but there is certainly an intelligence and a consciousness. Remember what we're talking about here. It doesn't the physical gray matter is only the physical counterpart of the mind, of the consciousness.
Look at what an ant carries, 3 times its weight, 10 times its weight, like you were saying. with certain things.
Each species has its own power and
Let me see.
purpose. I think.
Eugene and Terry, someone commented, were you referring to our student's explanation of the, I think Terry or Eugene logged in as Ancient Wisdom, which is what I thought I was logged in at. I'm not sure who's making that comment. So it looks like I said that, but I didn't say that. Anyway. All right, but again, there's a whole chapter on this, on how the consciousness evolves through the physical forms. Consciousness learns and grows and expresses itself in the plant world. Consciousness learns, grows, and expresses itself through all the different forms of the animal world. But then there's more. The highest animals, the most intelligent and capable animals, there's got to be more of something that comes next for the indwelling consciousness than even the highest primates who can almost speak and almost do math. So what's next? The human realm, the human kingdom. So consciousness lives millions of years through different human bodies, through this idea of reincarnation, learning, growing, expressing, fumbling, making mistakes, learning about the world. Eventually there's got to be something more as well. Have you ever thought about what's next after the human kingdom?
Ooh.
There's more, but wait, there's more.
I have a question about evolution.
Sure.
So, assuming that we remove ourselves from the space-time continuum, then we're not moving forward or backward. Everything is occurring at the same time.
How do you remove yourself from the space-time continuum?
Well, we don't, but
Because it's not really there.
but after you move from that, we do not move. Well, I mean, we're stuck in it. But on different dimensions, things are existing right now, whether we go backwards or forwards. So we're just kind of assuming that we're moving in a forward pattern. But if you take that dimension, if you take the time space out of it, then you can move backwards just as easily. I mean, then everything is happening at the same time. It's just what we're experiencing is on this plane in time space.
Isn't that a quantum
Or
theory?
what our observation is. I just find that puzzling. That's why I'm asking.
Well, in the physical world, in the physical realm here, with physical bodies, this is the only place where time exists, so to speak. If we learn to meditate and learn to transcend the physical body, as we're taught in yoga and theosophy, and Eckhart Tolle teaches meditation, you'll realize that you can access the realms of timelessness. And so time is only a physical phenomenon, and you can begin to access realms that are outside of time and space.
So then how do we experience evolution as a forward moving thing?
How or
Because
why do
it's
we
just
experience-
as easily I
Well,
mean,
the
shouldn't
word
you be able
forward
to
might-
experience it from anywhere, from any plane?
There has to be a sequence of events. I mean, learning, it has to happen in a continuum. You learn a lesson and you remember the lesson you learned, and next time you put your hand towards the fire, you won't touch the fire again because you remembered that you burned yourself last time. So events have to happen in succession for us to learn and grow and, expand our consciousness. That happens through experience, and experience takes time in the physical world. We'll see by the end of this study course, we'll realize that is the reason that we have physical bodies, is to gain experience, to learn things, to grow. If we spend all of our time in David-chan or in the heaven world or in these higher realms of existence where everything is blissful and perfect, we'll realize, and you answer this question, explore this for yourselves, but there's no real purpose there. There's no way to experience and to grow. If everything is perfect, okay, cool, but what's next? I mean,
We're bored.
yeah. That's one of the arguments that theosophy puts forward towards reincarnation. And this is one discrepancy that theosophy has between itself and certain religions that talk about spending eternities in heaven, is that what's the point? To put it bluntly, what's the point of an eternity in heaven? Yes, okay, we might have deserved it by being a good person, by repenting our sins, and by acknowledging that Jesus is our Savior, but okay, that's cool to have an eternity in heaven, but all right, you know, is there anything,
Yeah.
maybe you'd want to come back down and help humanity more and teach and live and grow more.
Or
The
work-
point for that is that a lot of people, I mean, they're not on your level spiritually or physically or whatever. They don't think in those terms. They think in terms of life and death. Am I going to die? And that scares people. And the power of having a God, whatever you want to call your God here, is that power to relieve that anxiety from not knowing if you're going to live or die and what's next. And that's what God is. That's what God helps you with, to get through that. Otherwise, we might break down with that knowledge of nothing exists after us. That's a great fear.
Is that what God does, or is that what
God
religions do, though?
replaces fear in a lot of people in the way they think, in the way they pray. It alleviates anxiety and allows them to go forward.
Very true. Very true. I just want to make sure I'm clearly understanding, though. Is it God that alleviates the fear, or is it the religions?
Well, God is whoever you want it to be. I don't know who God is.
I would say that
It's whoever you want it to be.
Sure.
It is. It's your, like AA. I went to AA. It's your higher power, whatever it is. It's a higher power that you look to help you get through your psyche that can be your mind can do things and make you fearful. It can cause stress, and which can cause heart attacks. You're talking about the physical, the manifestation of mental effects on your physical body. God alleviates a lot of that.
But you know, in the meanwhile, you gotta be a God-fearing person.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't be so quick to say that it's actually God that alleviates it, but it's an understanding, and it's a learning about how the world works and how life works. Maybe it is just the idea that there is a good God that is cradling us and taking care of us if we are a good person, or maybe it's just an understanding. See, if we have lack of understanding, that breeds fear. If we don't know, if we are unaware, a lot of people are scared because of just the unknown. But if we study, if we practice what in the yogic philosophy is called svadhyaya, self-study, study of the self and study by the self of scriptures and of the world itself, if we study and learn by nature, that eliminates the fear, because then we know. So many traditions and so many clairvoyants and wise people talk about what happens after death. And if you never learn and if you never explore and kind of investigate on your own, yeah, it's scary. What the heck happens? I mean, do I go to a place of fire and brimstone, or is it just completely black? Do the lights turn out and there's nothing else? Or is there heaven? Are there angels with violins? What? Investigate and then think about it. See, what we're challenged to do here is to take all these different ideas we hear from all these different places, see what makes sense to you.
But
And that eliminates some of the fear just by doing it.
isn't that pragmatism at its best when, religions form and they tell you, and I'm being truthful. And they tell you, this is what you believe in. And if you do this, there are consequences to that, And when you die, that's the expression that many, religions, pragmatic religions use. When you die, you go to heaven or you go to another place. And like you were saying, that alleviates, that was the loophole that I felt they used, the infamous they who formed these religions used to gather people and say, oh, we know the answer, and this is the answer. And it alleviated a lot of fear.
But it also
And people-
instills fear because they're
Yes.
telling you, if you don't do this,
But
you're going to hell.
That's this. That's the.
I always
So
looked at it as religion is man. God is your inner self.
Good.
Yeah.
Right.
Religion is all man-made. Is mostly, and whatever's
Yeah.
man-made is corrupt.
Oh, wow.
Bar none.
I'm glad we didn't say that.
That's why I wanted to clarify if you were speaking about religion or about God, the energy. But okay, let's all right, what is our next bullet point here? Evolution. All right, top of the right top of the page 5. Our material forms are evolving, but so are our conscious knowledge of the universe and our spiritual awareness of our basic unity with all life. One more time. Our material forms are evolving, but so are our conscious knowledge of the universe and our spiritual awareness of our basic unity with all life. This is just rehashing what we've been talking about the entire time. So Darwin talks about the survival of the fittest concept and how species evolved to succeed in their environments. That's the material form evolving. And there's not necessarily anything conscious going on with that. It's just the forms that are not suited for the environment don't reproduce when the lineage dies, the DNA is not passed on. The forms that are suited for the environment do pass on there. So that's the evolution of the what Darwin teaches of the physical. However, the consciousness is what we're talking about here, the learning and the awareness is not lost when the physical body dies. It's retained at a higher level in the higher koshas, the mental body and above, and it's used over and over again. Okay. Let's go to, next bullet point. We are composite beings. Again, we've talked about this the whole class so far. We have a number of independently evolved principles or faculties whose development is a purpose of evolution. In both the universe and in us, there are 7 such principles. So again, this is talking about the 7 layers or 7 koshas of the body, the bottom 3 having already been discussed, and there are several above the 3 that we'll get to later. And it's said that the universe around us also operates within those 7 planes. So the planet Earth itself has an etheric, an astral, mental field of itself. We've all heard of auras before. Aura is kind of like a pop phrase, right? We have an aura. Well, that's one of those subdivisions Roger was talking about. It's not really the emotional. It's actually a subdivision of the physical. Science doesn't detect it yet, though. But the aura is what we carry around based on our collective state, our collective state of our emotions, our mind, how we habitually think and feel, colors and shapes and creates our aura.
Right.
Well,
Which changes.
which constantly changes, yes. Other things besides humans have auras as well. The energy that is created and imbued into buildings have auras. The planet itself has an aura. So it's said that the solar system has these seven planes and levels as well as human beings do. Okay, next. We are threefold beings. Okay, so this is another way to describe the human instead of the 7. So it says we are threefold beings: a temporary single lifetime personality, an abiding, evolving individuality that reincarnates, and a spark or direct emanation of the ultimate reality. The integration of these 3 aspects is the driving force of our evolution. Okay, so what these 3 parts, let's clarify these 3 things. A temporary single lifetime personality is basically our physical body. Attached to is our lower mental, so our mental capacities and our emotional body. That makes up the first part here, which dies when our physical body dies. That's all gone. The second part of us, an abiding, evolving individuality that reincarnates. So the higher mental body, another subdivision of the mental plane, Roger alluded to subdivisions of these planes. The higher part of the mental body is said to be the abode of the soul, or the higher self. The higher self that yoga teaches us to unify with our physical self, with our physical body. That's the part of us that retains the experience from each lifetime. Hence, an abiding, evolving individuality that reincarnates. That's the soul. The soul does not die when the physical body dies. The soul remains. That goes hand in hand with most religious teachings. The soul does not die. The soul remains.
People want to know that. That's
And
why everybody
that
wants to
provides
hear
comfort,
that,
does it not?
right?
Yeah.
That's the point. Nobody's going to listen to your religion if you tell them there's nothing at the end of the day.
Then we'd be atheists, which is fine too. Yeah, it's very comforting. It definitely provides. And then, but the atheist would say, "Why do we need comfort? You know, the need for comfort is completely a human thing, and that doesn't prove that there's anything after death." Sure, okay. What makes sense to you is all that matters. So even above that, even above the higher self, which is the individuality that reincarnates, is in Vedantic terminology or yogic terminology, the Atma. Atma means spirit, or here it says a spark or direct emanation of the ultimate reality. God. Spark of God. We are all a spark of God.
Yes.
No?
No,
Maybe
yes.
not.
Well, yeah.
So it can be God with a little g. okay?
Right, no, and I get that.
Yeah.
I do, because there's still that universal force, whatever you call it.
All right, we're getting through these. I know this, it's a lot of deep stuff and we're just skimming the surface of a lot of
Just
this.
one comment.
Yes, of course.
What about controlling our behavior? I mean, you know, you say that God is a comfort to us. That's why religions expound this. But they are controlling us. You know, religions.
That's man. No,
Religions
that's not God.
control people by telling us, you know, be good or else you're going to hell.
But seeking a God is spiritual, but man using it against you, that's two separate things. It's two.
I think you guys are saying the same thing.
Are we?
Are you saying, are you saying that God controls people or religions control?
Well, religions.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I'm
you
separating religion from God because God
Right.
has nothing to do with religion. That's all man's actions.
Right,
I think you're saying the same thing.
they
Yeah.
are.
The religions like to have the control. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we agree with that.
Yeah.
The old
They
thumb.
use God to control you in that sense.
Right.
The process of evolution, which begins by unconscious impulse, must eventually become a conscious process directed by the free will and ever-increasing self-awareness of the evolving entities. The conscious participation by human beings is evolutionary change symbolized as walking a path. All right, this puts different words into what we've already been saying as well. So the process of evolution begins by unconscious impulse. Let's take this back to the animal world. Ants, insects, they're conscious, they're certainly aware, but do they know that they're spiritually evolving beings? They don't know that. They don't know that they're walking a path of spiritual evolution, but they are. The indwelling awareness in the ant is growing in consciousness. It is growing by learning how to find food, how to survive, how to reproduce. And that awareness is being retained in the collective mind of the ant species somehow. I'm not sure how it works somehow. And it's evolving and growing and abiding through each death and rebirth of the ant bodies, right? So that evolves over time. But they don't know it's evolving, it's unconscious. At some point in the spark of divinity's path or journey, it will reach the human kingdom, and at some point, we'll look up at the stars or at the sky or realize, hey, why am I here? Is there something more to this life than just going out and hunting and gathering or creating a clan and, you know, reproducing with as many women as I can? Is there more to life than just this? And then we have the ability then to question and the path that we're walking becomes conscious. That doesn't happen in the mineral kingdom, the plant kingdom, or the animal kingdom. They don't have, these kingdoms are aware, but they're not aware that they are consciously evolving. That comes in the human realm, when we understand what is right and wrong, what is good and what is bad, what is helpful and not helpful. It's more than just instinctual at that point. But the process began trillions of years ago when our consciousness was in a granite slab buried 50,000 miles below the surface of the planet, experiencing pressure and heat and earthquakes. That was the experience that our consciousness had then. Now our experience is, how do I eliminate suffering for my fellow man? It's all experience on Earth. It's just a different kind of experience.
Are they saying that life came to be, but it says by an unconscious impulse?
Which one? Which bullet point?
The same one, the process of evolution, which begins by unconscious impulse. Are they talking about creation?
I don't think it's talking about creation there. I think it's talking about the life forms that are on the planet. The evolution starts unconsciously, like I'm saying. Animals don't operate with the conscious knowledge of this. They're instinctual.
It's like by rote, like they come in, they just know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's an unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So is there an answer to the beginning of it all in this book, or?
We will get very close to it, yes.
Okay.
We'll get very, very close, yeah. Well, let's just lay it out, though. The question is, why are we here? Is that the question?
Right.
Why
Well,
did manifestation happen?
How? Yeah,
How
how
and
and why?
Okay. Let's try to answer it through these next sessions.
Okay.
Okay, stand by and stay tuned.
Let's do our best to answer it. And by the way, for those of you online, that was my mom asking me a question. We've got some more participants online. Hey, everyone online. Dre, Ashlyn, Amber, Natalie, Valerie. Oh, Valerie, she's been here before. Valerie's from the team. All right, we're getting through these bullet points here. All right, the process. All right, the evolving entities of the universe include intelligences both less and more advanced than human beings, of whom some of the more advanced masters or adepts may serve as helpers and guides to the less advanced. We've been talking about this idea of evolution of consciousness, how consciousness evolves, and we're at a certain stage, all of us are at different stages. And by the way, don't ever judge at what stage you're on. And it's not important. The only thing that's important is that you're putting one foot in front of the other. And certainly it goes without saying, don't judge where someone else is on the path. I'm more enlightened than that person.
No, just honor it.
There you go. Okay. One of the things I learned a long time ago about the path to enlightenment is it's like climbing a mountain, and there is a multitude of paths, and you can take whichever path you want to. Typically, you don't go back. Once you start, you always advance to the top. And one other thing I'll mention, he was talking about the people that are already ahead ahead of us to help us along. There's a good picture of one right there that a friend of mine drew. That is Maitreya. He's one of the masters. So we'll get into these later, I think. If not, I can get into them myself later on with a class on the 7 rays.
Oh, the 7. So that is good.
Awesome sevens.
That's a good one.
Well, it just goes along with reason that if consciousness has been evolving through these different kingdoms, minerals, plants, animals, and humans, that it wouldn't just stop at humans, and there is more. After your awareness learns every single lesson there is to learn through the human form, what's next? Well, we have masters or adepts, of which we've mentioned several. The Buddha, Jesus Christ, Lao Tzu, several enlightened people that are serving as teachers for humanity, illuminating the path for us, giving us clues and hints, how to live better, how to eliminate suffering from ourselves and others.
Are the adepts the chelas?
The word chela actually means student.
Right, but what are, who also teaches? I mean,
Well, sure. Students do teach. We're all
Right.
teachers and we're all
Right.
students. So
So
the
what is-
word chela usually refers to a student of one of the adepts or one of
Okay.
the masters.
okay.
Yeah. The key to advancement of human evolution is a dedication by the individual to the service of others, that is, altruism, an awareness of brotherly unity, and a forgetfulness of personal separateness. So it's saying in no uncertain terms that the key to spiritual growth is this awareness of brotherly unity. Elimination of the I consciousness, as I mentioned earlier. Eckhart Tolle, his entire book here is all about releasing the ego. The ego is the I consciousness, the sense that makes me special, different, separate. Well, that's the opposite of what we're talking about here. Yes, we can. Each of us can strive to achieve things and set goals and achieve them. But the idea that I'm a separate entity than you and I'm better than you, I'm not going to say that. That's the opposite of this idea of brotherhood. I think we're a few more. The pain, cruelty, and frustration we experience in life are the result of ignorance, unbalanced actions, relative dislocations, or change. They are not independently existing evils. That could take a whole month to discuss. I know. There's a chapter in the book on the question of evil. It's a very, very good chapter. Let's just go through the last few of these because it's already 3:48, believe it or not.
Wow. But is karma discussed in this book?
There's a whole chapter on karma.
All righty then. Because that's what this takes me to.
Yes. It is possible as a result of individual effort in this life for human beings to become, by intuitive knowledge or mystical experience, to a full awareness of their non-separateness from the ultimate reality. All right, that gives us a little clue as to the practical teachings of yoga. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is a whole manual on meditation. Well, the goal of meditation is samadhi. Samadhi is the 8th limb of Raja Yoga, the 8th limb being transcendence. Learning how to cut loose your awareness from your physical self and realize ultimate oneness. That's what samadhi, the higher levels of samadhi are. And again, there are levels of samadhi. I'm not sure. Are there 7?
Don't you?
There might be 7
Probably.
levels of samadhi. It starts off with focusing on an object of meditation. It's a process, and eventually you're able to loosen your consciousness from the physical body and achieve non-separateness. Correspondences, analogies, meaningful connections, and patterned repetitions exist among all things in the universe. By using those correspondences, we can use what we know to discover the unknown. And lastly, behind the exoteric or public forms of all religions and religious philosophies, there exists an esoteric or inner teaching that holds such concepts as those listed here. Okay. That was a lot. All right.
Now, is there any questions?
Oh, I'm ready to go on to the next stage.
All
I
right,
just
so
wish I had, we did this on my first class, which was 2 weeks ago,
Mhm.
because this all just kind of answered my question I had about A Course in Miracles. I can tell already they're very different. I just didn't
Very
understand what this is all
Very
about, so this
different.
was real good for me.
we actually have 2 or 3 people that are online here that have studied extensively the Course in Miracles. And if Jamie is still on, maybe Jamie can comment on how yoga philosophy and Course in Miracles correlate. My good friend Jamie Hosmer, he's joined us in person before. Maybe he'll be here. He studied extensively Course in Miracles and this stuff. So. Well, we've got 9 minutes left. Let's see what we could. Let's give a foreshadowing of what's to come. So we didn't even talk about chapter 3 yet. Universal Brotherhood.
It's a good thing I jumped in there early, otherwise we wouldn't even know what's coming, right?
Let's see. We asked some questions the last class, or the email. Did everyone get the email about this class? I included some questions. There were 4 questions to ponder. What does spiritual growth mean to you? We've talked a lot about this evolution of consciousness, but any ideas of what spiritual growth means?
The ladder towards enlightenment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Knowledge.
yeah.
Gaining knowledge. Mm-hmm. Climbing the ladder towards enlightenment. What is meditation and how can we benefit from meditation? What actually is it, practically? What actually is meditation? You can't answer.
So you can,
You know too much. You can't answer.
yeah.
What is it, Roger?
It calms you. It
Mm-hmm.
makes you very open to
We see.
whatever might be coming in from above or anything like
That's definitely one aspect of meditation. Yeah, calming the mind. Sure.
that. Get rid of those monkey brains.
Connection with the higher self.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Connection with the higher self. Exactly.
Used to, when I used to give classes here on it, one of the things we would do when we started would be to connect yourself to your higher self, make that guy work, because he doesn't pay any attention to it most of the time. He just basically, he doesn't pay any attention at all. So what you do is you force him to look down and help with the meditation. And believe me, he picks up just like, it's like the lights of the world start coming up in different places when you can see stuff.
Yeah.
Mom, you mentioned that it's a connection with the higher self. What are some actual techniques? I know you have a meditation practice. What are some actual methods or techniques that you do to meditate?
Put you on the spot.
I do standard meditation. I sit just like as we did at the beginning of this class, close my eyes, and I will sometimes focus on an issue that's troubling me that I want to resolve, like the healing of my grandchild. You know, I'll say maybe I'll invoke Jesus. Jesus heal my grandchild, something like that. So instead of using Om, you know, I might use some other term. But I just do standard meditation.
I'm asking because any practical knowledge of this is good. What do we actually do for meditation? Because again, it's kind of a vague term. How do you meditate? Well, there's a ton of ways. That's one.
Right. If you do have something bothering you, when you start meditating, guess what it comes? It comes right into, and you start realizing where it's at, what you need to do about it,
Right.
how to resolve it, and it goes away.
I've got a lot of clarity through meditation.
And
Is suffering avoidable?
That's a hard
Let's hope
question.
No.
No, because how do you learn? I mean, how do you advance? How do you know? Because without joy,
It's true.
I mean, there's no sorrow
Couldn't
and
there be
vice
a
versa.
collective conscious of the good to advance? Does it have to be by suffering?
How about this question? Is some suffering avoidable?
Mhm,
Can we begin to eliminate some suffering from our lives?
mhm.
Yes.
Maybe I should have asked the question differently. I was leading you toward a different answer. And then the second part is suffering somehow necessary? And you just answered it because you guys are so smart. Yes, it is necessary, right? That's how we grow. And now the big question that Mom just posed. Did life appear in the universe by chance, or is there a grand purpose?
Well, Mom,
That's the answer we all want.
Yeah.
Well, are we God's playthings, or is there really a reason for us being
oh, the latter.
here?
I'm like, wow, that just dismantled a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, Christianity, of course, says it's to unite with God, to be one with God. That's our purpose.
Mhm.
But we're studying other ways here.
Right.
One of the arguments that the atheists present is that life happened by chance, that there was organic material existing on the earth, and somehow a lightning bolt struck it and started consciousness somehow, like ignited consciousness, and started by chance. So that's what we're asking here. Did life appear in the universe by chance, or is there a plan and a purpose? So I'm sure you can tell from our last two sessions that Theosophy and yoga teach that there's 100% purpose and a plan, and that it wasn't by chance.
Mhm.
So Hope says she loves you.
That's Paul's sister in Idaho, I guess.
Oh.
I love her too.
And we have a comment from Daniela online. She says, I'd love to hear more about ways to meditate. I'm still having a hard time with that. Daniela recently finished her yoga teacher training. I had the pleasure of assisting with that training. So she's asking for other methods or hints or ideas on how to actually meditate. I mean, I have some to share, but I want to hear from everyone else too. Yes.
One of the ways I've meditated for years was, this is gonna sound, was cross stitch.
I'm sorry?
Cross stitch.
Oh.
I'm still working on this piece, but it's a piece of linen and it's 1/1 thread. So 1x over, one way and then over one thread. And when you get into that, because it's so precise, there's nothing else on your mind. There's nothing else, and things come in.
Wow, very good. That sounds good. Well, you're describing a process that has everything to do with a school of yoga called Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is a yoga of the mental capacity, and when you focus on something with your mind in action with your mind, and you're concentrating, it could be art, music, science, cross stitch. It's a form of meditation for sure. There are plenty of there's a book.
Yeah, I just put a book out for you right there.
Roger just put The Science of Meditation. There are several books like this, Daniela, that we can recommend. I'm not sure if you were online, Daniela, when we first started, but we did a meditation at the beginning. And hands down, the easiest method to use is sitting quietly and following the breath.
Yeah.
Because the breath is always there, right? When you take your awareness off of your problems, your day-to-day activities, what to eat later, what you didn't get accomplished today, and you put your awareness on something subtle like the breath, that is a meditation. It can be as simple as that. And that's what we did at the beginning. We just watched the air go in. And the more intent and focused you are, the calmer the monkey mind, as Roger said earlier, gets. And that just by nature reduces suffering. Something that Eckhart Tolle says that I always quote is that suffering happens in the past and the future, not in the present moment. So when you give yourself something to anchor your mind to, whether it's the sound of a bowl, hearing the bowl, the sound, following your breath, focusing on a loved one, like my mom was saying, that takes your awareness off of whatever did or didn't happen earlier in the day or last week or last year, and what you're anxious about tomorrow or next month. It takes you out of the past and future, which is where suffering happens, and puts you into the present moment, which is everything is fine. at this moment, right now, in this chair, we're perfect.
And
That's eliminating suffering.
deep breath work, I mean, I do a lot of deep breath work. And to me, that's very metaphysical because it brings in the light. I mean, to me, the oxygen is the light. Laughing is the light. And it changes, physically changes what's going on in your mind.
When I first started meditating, one of the things I was taught was to relax. And you start by relaxing your toes, work your way up to your ankles, work your way up to your thighs, work all the way up and down your hands. And then after you've done all that, your neck and everything, once you've done all that, you go back and look and say, what didn't I not relax? And then you go back and relax that too. And then the next thing you know, you're relaxed.
You're asleep.
Yeah, you're asleep.
You can also breathe through your chakras. You know, work your way up chakra by chakra.
And I have found that symphonic music, classical music mostly, is to me is just uplifting. It keeps me on track. I think silence is the best because we were just in a meditation a week ago. There was just too many words, you know. And one was, you know, feel your heart beating, and I said, my heart's not beating.
Oh my God.
So, you know,
Where am I?
but it's music or silence and breathing.
Breathing is huge, and breathing is one of the 8 limbs of Raja Yoga. The teaching and practice of pranayama is huge. So for Daniela, yeah, she's thumbing that up. Breathing is a wonderful way to meditate. There are all kinds of techniques. Alternate nostril breathing is said to really calm the nervous system down very fast. Introducing a hold after the inhale with full lungs, holding and keeping your focus at one of the chakras. Holding after the exhale, after you finish exhaling with no air in the lungs. That's incredibly more challenging than holding with full lungs. But that helps really suck the mind into a void of stillness. And you can pause at any stage during the duration of the inhale or the exhale. So many different pranayama techniques. You can do all those with one nostril closed or the other. So all good ways to practice meditation. Okay, it's 4:01. We're going to wrap up.
Wow.
Yeah, wonderful conversation. This is wonderful, everyone. To our online students, thank you. And of course, you guys here in person.
Chapter 3 in 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Not 2 weeks though, because in 2 weeks it's Easter Sunday. So whatever the Sunday is after Easter Sunday.
Should we get
What's
your day?
April.
Deb?
Okay,
No,
great.
I'm gonna talk about that.
Yeah. So
And then I'll-
thank you
Go
everyone.
on and on.
Easter is April 1st, so April 8th.
Next time.
April 8th.
She's with me.
April.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.